Countdown. Countdown.
And welcome to This Week in Worcester podcast. I am Tom Marino, editor of This Week in Worcester. I am here with Mr. John Edward Keogh. He is the executive producer of Manny J Media. Hi, John.
Hi, Tom. That's me.
It
How
is
you doing,
time
buddy?
to. I'm okay. It is time to talk about all the uplifting things in the world. That's a lie. Um, and
It's definitely rough.
it's going to be a show. Um, Today we are going to talk about actually a document that came out last month, the city's homeless strategic plan to combat homelessness. Some information I have gathered about the pending orders from city council to the administration, and we'll talk about a visit of a certain individual to Capitol Hill this week, which I will have not nice things to say about, and that will be the yelly part of the show. Starting with the this strategic plan to combat homelessness in the city. Some interesting statistics it has. January 22 to March 24, the number of individuals experiencing chronic homelessness decreased from 184 to 163, according to this report. In March 2024, that's the data in this report only goes up to March, the first quarter of this year. 593 non-chronically homeless individuals seeking refuge within our shelter system in the city. And in a point in time in January, there were 51 people living in encampments. Also, another interesting and depressing stat from 2018 to 2022, there's a significant increase in homelessness among people aged 65 and older. A notable surge of over 29%.
Yeah.
So, less chronically homeless people is good. 593 people. By the way, of those people, the median length of stay inside shelter for these individuals was 3 days. So these are people who are hopefully temporarily homeless. Your thoughts, sir?
So, okay, right off the bat, the first number is that the amount of people experiencing chronic homelessness between 2022 and 2024 decreased, according to the city manager's thing, by 19 people. Couple things. One, I don't believe the number 184 for a second, right? And part of this has been my own long-term project to identify the people who are living in unhoused conditions here in the city of Worcester through conversational acquisition, trying to find out where they're from, because the city has long taken the position that most of the people who are homeless chronically in Worcester and that come from outside places, and they always they love to blame the towns. This is a traditional Worcester thing. It's been going on for years. City manager Augustus did it. City manager Batista does it, and says it's the towns, it's the towns, it's the towns. It's not our problem, and we're the people are not from here. I found that that's not true. On my list, I have more than 184 people. Right? So on my personal list. Now my list is not scientific. It's just me talking to people. So I don't have a secondary person following me around. But I'm just going to tell you my list is longer than that. There's some numbers here that they report that are completely contradictory. Couple things right off the bat. There's an increase in older folks being homeless, right? Which is very sad. Generally speaking, people who are older need more service oriented housing, right? So they need medical treatment, maybe, sometimes those kind of things. So where are those beds? Because according to the paper, there's still 205 beds, which is the number we've been at it for a long time. That 205 is only related to the 80 that are at the RMV, which closes in the summertime, right? So it goes down to 125. Specialty beds are very rare And we know that because we had specialty beds close on Chandler Street early this year. So we had a shelter close on Chandler Street, right? And that was a specialty facility. We had the UMass change their structure of their beds, and then we had an increase in the population. But they're saying that they had a decrease in the total homeless people. That doesn't make sense. So right off the bat, I'm skeptical about the number. I'd like to understand the method in this report that they put out. There's no place that it shows the method of how they count, right? It just uses this time, says the point in time count. Who did the count? How did they count it? Did they? And I know I made I probably shouldn't say it, but how did they get this count? Because generally speaking, the folks that are unhoused don't want to talk to the quality of life team, and we know that because the quality of life team has gone to city council and say the unhoused don't like to talk to us. So how did they get the count? If they don't like to talk to you, they run and they move away from you when you come near. How are you getting this count that you say that is a reduction? And then how is the city manager at the state of the city saying that we have a crisis that we've never experienced before in the city of Worcester, like all the other municipalities in the country? How is he saying that in one place and yet there's a reduction? It just boggles the mind. And this is the information that's presented to the city council from that department. Literal contradictions. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. The other thing is the point in time count says 51 people living in encampments, but there's 163 people that are experiencing chronic homelessness. So what happens to the other 112? Where do those 112 people go? Are they not in the encampments? If they're chronically homeless, they're out of the shelter system. Because when you use the term chronically homeless, usually means people who are not in the shelter system, and non-chronically homeless means they're in the shelter system, moving along the path, right, path towards housing, right? That's the normal understanding. So do you see what I mean? I see this report and I see some issues related to the unhoused approach, the scientific consensus that we've kind of had for a while. There's two ways to determine whether a person is chronically homeless or not. The most common way is that they're not entering into the shelter system. And so we're unable to account for them. And when they do enter into the shelter system, they fall back out, right? So this is someone who may have gone to the Salvation Army on Main Street, and they stayed there for a couple of days. But Salvation Army has very severe guidelines for being able to stay in there. But you have to be there at a certain time. You have to do certain things, and then if you don't do those things, you can get kicked out really fast, and then you're back on the street. That's kind of the cycle of the chronically homeless person. So where do these numbers come from? I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and it doesn't explain it. The other thing is there's a tracking of these numbers from January of 22 to March of this year that kind of has this constant number. So I just want to know, how are they getting these numbers? How do they know it? Where do they know it from? I see a bunch of agencies that they have on here, agencies that put out press releases that say that these numbers are different. So it looks like there's not a consensus from all the different people that are involved with this. And so for me, I think it should be more clear how they get these numbers, what's the approach, and whether or not the city's even telling us the truth. Because I think it would behoove the city to make it look like we don't have as many unhoused people. And the way that they treat them in general is as if they're an afterthought. So I don't know that I believe this report from the city manager's office at all.
So, just first thing in general, Dr. Castile, who's the Commissioner of Health and Human Services, authored this report. She is generally right about things, first of all. So that doesn't mean you shouldn't be skeptical of it. I would just wanted to point that out. Dr. Castile, in my view, takes the right side of a lot of tough issues. So I wasn't aware.
Methodology in there.
Why
didn't she put her methodology in there?
I don't think that would be typical for this type of report. If this was something, this is an internal to the city council type of thing, they usually don't do that, right? They should, maybe, but they don't. On chronically, how I also was a bit surprised that the number of chronically homeless went down. Um, but I mean, this doesn't. I wouldn't say overall this report is very light. I mean, 593 people served in 1 month. Again, most of those not chronically homeless. It may be what is it, a median stay of 3 days in the shelter, according to data from the city. So, I mean, that's not a good place to be, right? It's not good. Could they be softening it? They could. I just, when I read through this, I didn't think, oh wow, they're really softballing this. I thought, holy S, to be honest, like this is bad. So, and I mean, there was something else here too. There's also some housing statistics as part of this. Worcester has the lowest rental vacancy rate among the 75 largest metropolitan areas at 2%. And median cost per square foot rose 10% during the same period. And then there was some eviction rates as well. Non-payment evictions in Worcester went from 263 in 2022 to 471 in 2023. So that was also something I was, that's not softball. I don't think that's bad. So yeah, I'm not seeing this softball. I mean, point taken that you've, identified more people than they did here. Have the numbers gone up over the summer? I'm not sure. That seems to be the trend, right? February. No, actually, seems to be the winter that is higher than the summer. So,
yeah. So the question that I would have, Tommy, is then if you got more evictions and you have, and more of those evictions are unfavorable, like where does that population go? And so why would the number go? It just doesn't make sense that it would go. I'm not saying Dr. Castile is lying. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I have a hard time believing that the
data that was collected
is collecting the data that the way, because I don't think they care as much about the unhoused as they think. And let's for the sake of this argument say that the number is only 163 to 184. That was that range that they gave. That's not a number that makes me think, oh, I can't figure out 184 rooms. That's not a number that scares me, right? That's a number that makes
but at the same time, when you're also, I mean, I assume that some of the chronically homeless people are included in this 593 that was served in March. But I mean, they also said median stay of 3 days, so it's not like these are, I think the missing piece of this here is on this topic subject as a whole is people that are temporarily without housing, for short durations because of some event, right? Whether it be eviction or whatever, saying somebody that kicked them out or whatever.
right.
I'm sure that there's a million scenarios that we would never even think of. But I think that might be the missing piece here is that the there is churn in the unhoused community because people are cycling through and hopefully getting out of that situation as quickly as they can.
Right. So, and that makes sense to me that this churn, because that's what we actually see. Like, I live for those people who, if you're watching and you don't know, I live in a rooming house. I don't live in an apartment or a house. I live in a rooming house, and I've lived there for about almost 6 years. And that house has 15 rooms. There's single rooms. We share a common area, a kitchen, and and bathrooms. And that 15 rooms has, there's only 2 people other than myself that have been there the whole 6 years. Everybody else is cycle. Some of the cycles have been people have died in that house. There's at least 5 people that I know personally that died. They passed away, and then someone else came into the house. It's run by the Worcester Community Housing Agency, and so that that's something I know that it happens. People are constantly moving in, and there's people that live there now that went out, were homeless, and came back. So that makes sense to me. But these numbers don't click in my mind as a if the number is only 600, let's say it's 600, that's an achievable number in a city of 210,000. Like this is a 5-year plan. It's going to take us 5 years to come up with 600 rooms. I don't know that that's right, right? Like that doesn't really compute in my mind. Now, again, maybe there's restrictions and it's hard for them to do it, but there's open and empty office buildings in downtown right now that could be converted, right? I understand that there's a process of acquisition and blah blah blah. I get it. I get all that stuff. That's completely understandable. I understand. But you're telling me there's no way to find room for that amount of people if it's that small. And my contention is it's not that small. It's a significantly higher number, both here in the city and in Worcester County in general. And by conflating it smaller, whatever methodology they're using that's resulting in these numbers means that we don't know the extent of the crisis. Because we don't know the extent, we can't really attack it in a material way.
Fair enough. And just playing devil's advocate here slightly. It's also probably a difficult number to get right. Right, it's probably a difficult thing to get accurately. I would imagine that this is the data they have. Is a good data or a bad data? I don't
know. And then so the Oriole Drive project, which is supposed to add 90 apartments, right? To me, once that opens, which by the way, I know there's been a big controversy from people in that neighborhood, which again, that's based on misinformation and them not understanding the scenario. To get into permanent supportive housing, you have to go through a bunch of steps. So it's not like someone who is like on the street that's literally in the active throes of substance abuse goes immediately into a program like that. But of course, the townies come out and they start yelling and screaming about stuff they don't know about. But to get into permanent supportive housing, you've gone through a tremendous series of hoops, which, by the way, you're also in unstable housing while you're going through those hoops to get into that situation. So you've been in shelters, you've been rotated through the motel bed system and all these other things. And then your name has come up on the list, and it's designed for families, right? So it's generally single moms. That's a lot of the folks that are in there. So a mom with kids that are teenagers or below, and they're moving into those kind of supportive housing. They've gone through everything. You would think that number then would reduce this number significantly once that project comes online. That's why I'm having a hard time understanding it, because then there's 4 more years of progress to address this situation. But those 90 beds, if those are family-oriented rooms and apartments, and they're supposed to be multi-room units, right, in the old Oriole Drive project, you would think that would be a big hit on that number 163 or 184, right? That would really knock it down, because those folks would move into the shelter system, and these folks that have gone through all the hoops and have been bumped around, as you said, in the churn, are now into a permanent, stable situation. You think that would help the city's overall population move into being housed versus unhoused. Hey, Leanne.
Yeah, no, I mean that's probably fair. Anything else you found in this report that you thought interesting or otherwise?
Yeah. So the last thing is that you found this, right? And you went and did the work to discover this. And the other thing that puts it skeptically in my mind is that it wasn't announced with great fanfare, right? To me, this should be a massive front of brain, front of policy, front of the chart issue, right? We're in a crisis. We're dealing with these things. We hear them talk about it like that. This report gets delivered in March. You just discovered it now, right? Is that
no? It was delivered in June. It was delivered last month. I think I found it because it's going before the Health and Human Services Committee of City Council. So I think it actually has come through the full council, and they forwarded it to committee.
Right. So then that's really my question is, so there is why is this not? And I guess maybe it's just the approach. I guess I can't criticize it for me, but if I were the city manager this would be something I'd be talking about on all the TV shows and all the radio shows and all the stuff. This would be something I would be talking about. And if he's not talking about this, that makes me question whether or not it's valid. Like, so, like, why are not we leading with this on the nightly news? Like, hey, we have a 5-year plan and we're ready to go and we're committed to this and we got all these agents. Why isn't Dr. Castile doing that? Like like, why isn't the city administration putting that out there? And to me, that really bothers me. And Leanne says you should put up the visual of the report. It's 13 pages. That's why, Leanne. But it just gives you an idea.
Yeah, it's I think that there's a lot of, anytime you talk about doing anything for anyone really, I think there's a lot of pushback about, you know, the they get everything, and that might be why. I'm sure. I think that I think that there is a contingent of people in the city that when you're doing anything for anyone, especially someone who's underprivileged or in a bad situation or whatever, it's they get everything and we don't. And I'm not sure how well this actually plays politically.
And I understand that. And there's where I guess I disconnect from modern politicians in general. Like, can anybody be a hero? Like, this is to me is a winning issue for me. That, and maybe it's because I've experienced being unhoused. I told you I was in a rooming house less than 6 years ago. I was homeless and I was living in the bus station and living in motels, and I went through the same scenario, the same churn, and I had to go through a bunch of steps to get to where I am. I ended up a family let me stay with them, and it was very complicated. It was hard to do. So I recognize that, and I think, wouldn't you want more folks to be in a better position? So then once they're in a better position, we can work on some of the other folks. I don't know what it is, man. Maybe I have like proverbs on the mind. I have this thing in my mind that a fence is only as strong as the weakest link, right? Or the chain is only as strong as the weakest link. And it's like, wouldn't you want the folks that are dealing with the most to be stable before we can do some of these other things? Because let me tell you, I see the Table Talk Pies building, and I see the District 120 building, and I see the Revington Suites, and I see all these other buildings going up like this, Polar Park going up like this, and it's like instantaneous. And the amount of money that it's going to take to put these folks in shelters, I can't imagine it would cost as much as it is to build Polar Park, or to give a tax incentive to Table Talk Pies, or the millions and millions of dollars that they spent on tax breaks for the people building the buildings downtown. Like it doesn't compute in my mind. And I guess that for some people in the city, some voters and some donors, it's a more winning issue to have the Revington look pretty than it is to have people under the Green Street Bridge. But the fact is both are still happening at the same time, and you can't ignore one and celebrate the other. Like that doesn't compute. You have to drive under Green Street or walk by it on Polar Park. You can't avoid it forever. And so folks are dealing with it. The gas station directly across from Polar Park right now is kind of the epicenter of the unhoused situation here in Worcester. Right, the gas station, the Yatcos, they had to hire security because there's a lot of incidents that have been taking place there, which is something that definitely happens when you're unhoused. And there's a lot of things going on, when you're dealing with some of those things. So to me, I just think this should be the most important thing, but it seems like it's not. So it is what it is. But I will have to give credit to Attell, for making it one of the primary things that she focuses on as a city councilor. So I give her credit, and credit where credit is due. But I do have to say to the other 10, it's not your primary issue. Some of you have spoken on it, and obviously there's a couple like Christian and two who have spoken more about this compared to the rest of them. But it's not the primary focus of the city council, and to me it should be. If there's one homeless kid in this city, then the city's a failure, in my opinion. And that's just how, and I look at the country that way. I look at the world that way. There should be no kid starving, no kid without a bed. And we have that in our city. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, so I think you have to do a little bit of point taken. I think you do have to do a little bit of compartmentalizing. I mean, because homelessness isn't solved or is in a bad place doesn't mean that other good things don't happen. Using that way, it's when the other good things that happen are used as a distraction from the other
Right.
problems like homelessness that it's problematic. All right, so let's move on from that subject. In response to a public records request by yours truly, the city's legal department provided, they are the one that handled the requests for documents from the city. They provided a list of pending orders. I actually asked for pending reports, but I got what I got. From the administration to the city council. There is 110 of them.
Can we share it and like just roll through it real quick so people can just see how many there are? There's so many of them.
There is. I think that my system will feed back your voice, so shut up while we show this. And let me remember how to do that. You can talk right now until I figure this out.
The middle button, the one that says share screen, H.
Oh, that's the one. So here we are with we'll go to the top here. I mean, there's some stuff. A lot of these are reports, which is what I asked for. There's some orders in here as well, but still scrolling. Some of them more important than the other. But what I found interesting is something that I have been waiting for the administration to come back with. I will stop that now so you can speak. Oh, we don't want this, though. Why am I so big and you so little?
Tom's so big. Tom's a big, giant person over here.
There we go.
Hey!
Not exactly what we wanted, but whatever. What was I going? An order that I've been waiting for, and I know Councillor Russell's been waiting for, is not on here. That is Councillor Russell's order on the administration's position on how ordinances are to be drafted for vote by the council.
That's an interesting one.
It is an interesting one, and I have a sneaking suspicion what the answer is, which is why it's not being responded to.
I know Councilor King has been watching our show, checking in on us, on Sunday night. So I want to say thank you to him because on December 8th, one of the orders that is on that list, he put the feasibility study of increasing the stipend pay for election workers. And that is an issue that I asked him to look at because I am an election poll worker and the amount of money that we get paid for that day is so low. And not just me. Obviously, there's a bunch of folks in the city, but part of the thing is that a lot of the folks that used to do it are retiring, right? 65, and an older crowd are retiring and not wanting to do the election work anymore, and so you're entirely dependent on recruiting people for a single day, and $220 is a hard number for 16-hour days. It's a long day. You got to put a lot of work into it. And also they want to do paid training, right? And so they do paid training, but they kind of depend on people not showing up to those paid trainings because they don't have enough slots. And so they hope people will do the online training, which they don't have to pay for. You have to, if you show up in person, which I'll be going to, I don't know which day mine is, but it's on a Monday. At nighttime, I have to go to City Hall and do my training. And they have to pay you $40 to go to the training, right? So it's like that's the state law. So it's $260 total that you can make for your commitment to the single day. And then, of course, that's in September is the primary, and then November is the general election. And so I'm grateful to Councilor King for doing that. But that just shows you that's one of those issues where it's like it didn't even register on the media, even me, and I'm that's my thing.
Well, and it's interesting that they only gave me stuff for this fiscal year, right? If you notice, it starts the oldest one's end of July last year, and I wonder if I know there is an automatic sunsetting, if you will, of things that are in council or in committee if they haven't been dealt with. Committee can hold them, can keep them, but things that aren't specifically designated to be kept in committee, they automatically sunset after the end of the term. And I wonder if reports are the same way. But what this highlights really is the reliance on council to the administration for everything. And the total and complete lack of separate co-equal branches of our city government. And that is how the city charter, by the way, defines them, as an administrative and a legislative branch.
So the interesting thing is you saying that they fall off. We do know that there's at least some orders that kind of just hang out on the back end of the city council agenda for like a long period of time. Like there's
so if they're tabled, they can't be. Yeah, they have to come up, be taken off the table. They can live there forever. Yeah.
Right. So like there's at least two on here that are from Councilor Sarai Rivera, who's no longer the District 4 councilor. And it's in the you see it back in, and where was that? Those were both back in November.
There's older stuff from that on there.
Huh?
There's older stuff from that on there.
I know there's stuff going all the way back to July of last year. Like you said, it's the city. Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is there's two from a councilor who's no longer there. So how is that ever going to get addressed?
No.
Is it just going to hang out there, get dropped off? And that's the thing is, to me, like, I don't know. What's funny? Let me just tell a real quick anecdote. I've been working through my emails, right? Because I get a lot of emails. Because I have multiple roles in different places, and so I get a lot of stuff. I also get like emails from like aspiring filmmakers. So I get like, scripts and pitch decks and all this stuff. I get that stuff all the time. And I'll be honest with you, I have gotten way behind on stuff in the past, right? But so what I do when I want to catch up is I try to do it in bunches, right? Like I'm going to handle these 4 today and do 4, and then tomorrow do 5, and then tomorrow do 6, and then just kind of chip away at it. And so you would think with this list, and then the orders are numbered, is the city manager going through this list in a numerical fashion, like the oldest first? Or is there some things that become priority, and what makes them priority? Is it the level of controversy that is brewed up in the city council / local media that makes them become important? How do they be? Does another, if I don't know, if the mayor puts one on and another councilor joins in with that, does that make it a priority? What makes it priority? Because you would think you would want to deal with them at the time.
So I think that it would be natural. I mean, look, politics in part is people competing over their vision of an agenda, right?
Sure.
And I think it would only make natural sense. I'm not even saying that this is, some sort of malfeasance or something that's unethical. It would saying it would only make sense that the administration would fulfill requests for information based on its own agenda and what it wants the council to move forward on, and that's precisely the problem.
And these looking at them numerically, these are just the ones they haven't dealt with, right?
Correct. I believe so. Yeah, that's what I asked for.
So now I look back and order number 12717 from former city councilor Sean Rose on July 26th of last year. I only did that because it's like related right to today. Today's the 28th, so I picked one that was kind of close. It was related to the deceptive practices related to the limited pregnancy centers. Didn't they address it? I thought they addressed it.
They decided not to address it, really. But but apparently, like, this report was never returned, right? Or this request was never returned. So I mean, there's some stuff on here that like that, right? That was ultimately dealt with and or not dealt with, and they moved on from it. But I did find it interesting that there was. I mean, I knew right away. That's the first thing I looked for was Georgia's order, and it's not on here. Because I wanted to see kind of where it was. But I mean, I did a story last week. We talked about it last week on the connectivity equity report, or whatever it was called, right? Internet connectivity equity, and I had found 6 orders there related to municipal broadband that they've just been ignored for a couple of years now. My point here at least is, I mean, there's some interesting stuff in here of what hasn't been fulfilled, or interesting reports that people ask for. But the broader point here is, and I've said it before, city council's complete inability to get anything at all, any information at all, without it coming directly from and filtered through the city manager's office. And that's not an independent legislature. That is a dependent legislature that has no rights.
Yeah, and I think it's part of, this is just my own general thought. I've been thinking about this a lot lately because, I talk to you and I talk to Manny and we talk to a lot of people. And so you end up having these conversations all the time. You're at city council. And the thing is how do you become an effective legislator, right? Is it writing orders? Is it speaking in city council? And I think what it is at least in today's modern political society, this is not the ideal, the way that it's structured. But the only thing you can do realistically is batter the city manager's office through this. And so now realistically, if you're a city councilor, there's certain city councilors who you see do not do that. They won't criticize him directly unless it's something related to their own particular agenda. And then of course, because each person has a different set of things on their agenda, they like cycle through their own priorities. We don't have a single issue counselor, right? We just don't. And if we did have a single issue counselor, would they even be effective in the I want you to listen to me model now because it's pertinent to now? Or could they become more effective by just hammering the same thing over and over and over again for a period of time? I don't know. Because we haven't really seen that done in Worcester. We see it done in other places. Like, for example, and I cannot explain this to you, but there are representatives, both Democratic and Republican, up in the national level, who fundraise off of single issues, and they're able to not just fundraise, but fundraise like nobody, like just unbelievable amounts of money, and they win their races 80-20. It's crazy. Like but those are in usually safer districts. But you see some competitive people, and they they're just gonna go on, I don't know, gun control on the Democratic side, and maybe pro-life on the Republican side. I don't know. I'm just making up a subject, but they're able to do it. But when you kind of reduce down to the local level, you see that they're almost completely ineffective, right? And when they do make points, it's in these little 5-minute blocks that they're kind of stuck with. You know what I mean? And it's only if that item is on the agenda that week, and the agenda is pretty much set by the city manager. So it's hard.
It's set by the city manager through this process, by what information is made available. Yeah. And you frame that as you kind of frame that as the problem today in politics as a whole. Now, this is, I mean, I'm sure that there are other cities that have this issue, but this isn't a universal problem. Like in Boston, they actually have a legislature with actual power, and they have this thing called subpoena power, which they never have to use. They never have to go to court and subpoena somebody, because when they say we want this person to come in and talk to this committee, they come in so they don't get subpoenaed, right? And then Boston councils can get that information directly, right? Because they are entitled to it.
You also can't be held in contempt of counsel. There's no way to, like, if someone gets up and lies, right? That's fine. There is literally no effective measure to hold it. So like the mayor can't call, like, if some official gets up and says, the sky is red, he can't hold them contempt, which the Boston City Council, the council chair can have an order of contempt, which has financial penalty. I don't know that there's any city council that I know of that you can get locked up for it. I don't think you can, but you can get fined enough that you wouldn't be able to pay it, and then you have to go appear before a judge, and then maybe there could be some consequences that way. But
some
that's
legal
the
authority.
There's
they
no
have
teeth.
legal authority.
Right. Real, actual structured legal authority. And in our city, there isn't. And so it just makes it makes them a toothless tiger. They can yell and scream all they want, but it doesn't mean anything because there's nothing behind it. And so the only real tool they have is the media, right? So and then the media is all over the place. What? Say again?
In the meeting.
Yeah, in the meeting and the media. Yeah, this is only those two things. And then the news cycle moves so fast that there's no real legs. I mean, to be honest with you, this year, you and I have broke two of the stories kind of combined together, the cable thing and then the housing the housing rate, shenanigans that kind of lasted longer than a single news cycle, right? And I mean, but other than that, it kind of disappears. Even with you, you have to because you're a working newspaper reporter. You got to focus on the story that's coming, and it's nonstop in our world today, right? Because everything's on social media. Everything needs instantaneous reaction. I don't even want to talk about the Olympics thing. It's ridiculous. I'm moving on. It's just, but it dominates the world for this period of time. But then people forget about it on Tuesday. It's like, all right, it's all over. Whereas these ongoing situations, they never really get resolved because of that. So the city, to me, a city entity can't grow. You can't move forward, And I can't help but look at the towns around us because the city manager always brings up the towns, right? They're responsible for this and that. So I don't know. I look at Shrewsbury. They had the same problem with the cable thing just 4 years ago, and they moved to municipal broadband and municipal cable, and now
they had that longer than that.
Well, the municipal broadband is only 4 years old, right? The cable is older, but I'm talking about the internet. But anyways, they kind of solved it in their town. They have competition. They have lower prices than us. And that's not really a political issue anymore. And they have all these employees. It turned into like a jobs program and all kinds of stuff. So you'd think you want to see that move. Let's move on from this issue. Let's go to the next thing and kind of resolve that. But you can't even do that because there's no ability for the city councilor unless they just pick one issue and just hammer. And so I don't know. Can they even hammer? Will Mayor Petty allow them to do that? I don't know. I don't know if Joe will let him turn around and say to the city manager, because we also kind of see some unconstitutional stuff going on in that meeting, where they're silencing people and not allowing for them to speak, or at least making it difficult for them to speak, right? So because there is an agenda that's kind of enmeshed with certain folks' agendas, right? So
I think you're referring to yourself. If anybody is not aware, John was part of the Cable Television Advisory Committee and then brought a petition to City Council, which the city solicitor, someone who serves at the pleasure of the city manager, denied the ability of that petition to be on the agenda, which is, again, brings up all these separation of powers issues. Why? And I actually, the Municipal Operations Committee is taking up looking at the rules of City Council right now, and I went to their meeting last week to raise this very issue. He shouldn't have anything to do, and it's not about it's not about the individual serving as a solicitor. It is that the solicitor serves at the pleasure of whomever the city manager might be, and that is, by definition, in our charter, administrative branch, and it should have nothing to do with setting the agenda of the legislative branch. This is a fundamental American principle. Goes back to Federalist 49. It is in the Massachusetts Constitution of 1880. It was a key principle in the U.S. Constitution, not 1880, 1780, and it's a key principle in the U.S. Constitution. And we're just, like it doesn't exist. I will end this topic with this. Towns operate that operate with a select board. They have select person, selectmen, select woman. They are the actual executive. The board is the executive of the city, of the town, and
Right.
the manager, the town manager, or some call him town administrator or whatever. He's just a doer. He just works for them, right?
Right.
And what we do here in Worcester is we kind of have the inverted version of that, where the executive, the city manager, runs everything and determines everything, and everybody else just works for him.
So I got this. I got a copy of this book here. Let me see if I can zoom it in. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you see that? Parliamentary Procedure at a Glance.
That seems like a snooze fest.
So this is by O. Garfield Jones. Actually, this is what they give the city councilors when they become city councilors. This is a summary of Robert's Rules of Order, and they're in the onboarding process to be a city councilor. You're supposed to read this book and kind of get a grip on some of the things that you can do. Motions to reconsider and tabling and privilege and what that means and all those different things, which we don't have enough time really to go into. But when you look at it in this small guide, this is like a cliff notes of Robert's Rules of Order, right? It's really kind of like a short thing. It's not necessarily something that you can't overcome or learn, right? I don't think that there's any person that couldn't read this short book, which is only 66 pages long, right? It's not that long, that you couldn't figure it out and learn how to operate within that system. And you have other towns around us and close by that are able to operate a real legislator. I keep turning it because the camera's angle. With this little book, right? So and learn how to actually be a legislator that is effective. But the problem is that our charter doesn't give them anything to put real meat on the bone to really attack it, and so they're just left with these kind of like passing. We can say stuff that sounds funny. Motion for this, motion for that. You heard this. Table this. Hold that, this, that, but it doesn't really amount to anything unless there's a consensus. And when there's a consensus, as Mayor Petty has said many, many times, if you have 6 votes, you can run the city. And he's not wrong.
No, he is wrong because the council can't do anything.
True, but he does get all his things that he wants through, right? And sure. Yeah, well, that's what I mean. And so they think that what I'm saying, I guess maybe I should say it in a different way. Mayor Petty is in a line of mayors that thinks that is running the city, or at least presents it that way in public. And fine, that's fine, because I think Joe's fine. I don't have a problem with him in any general sense. There's some things I disagree with him in general, but because the city manager then has those things, there's no real way to hold him accountable back to us, the voters, right? So once it's in his hands, it's in his hands. You really can't do anything about it. And as you showed on that list, if he doesn't want to do anything about it, he just sits on it for weeks, months, years.
Yeah, forever. They just don't bring him back. It's really that simple. So there's an order from I forget what it is, Urban Technology Committee, I think it's called, and on feasibility study for your municipal broadband. It costs like $75,000 so you gotta do one of those, from what I understand, at least. And nothing hasn't been done. Not in the budget. No money budgeted for it. He's just decided. The God King has decided what we're going to do on that subject. It is the system is so stupid and is fundamentally un-American, is what it is.
And so and unless there's charter change, which of course is something that Tom is working for in his capacity, and I'm for, and a lot of people are for, to change the home rule, change the charter, make the government structure itself differently, or at least fix what's wrong in this specific area. If that doesn't happen, which it might not, because you need 6 votes for that to happen,
no, you don't.
You need 6 votes or a petition. Which Tom's working on signatures. You need an X amount of signatures. If that doesn't happen, in absence of that, you need somebody to run for city council, and they have to just be someone who impedes everything. Just constantly is in the media and just hammers and hammers and hammers and hammers and hammers.
That's why I can't be me. Can't be
It
me.
can't-
You know why? Because somebody holds one of my orders. I'm holding the agenda.
Right. Yeah, hold the whole agenda, right? Exactly.
Whole thing.
No. That I would do the same thing. I will just say, all right, you want to play games? We're just gonna be here till 2 o'clock in the morning every single Tuesday. And I'm gonna talk about like I would hold like, all the like weird things that pass without them talking about it. I'd hold every one of them, every single one, and make them vote on everything, because that's the only way that you and force every meeting to be 7, 8 hours long until they capitulate to my will. Like I would try to force them to capitulate to my will. And of course I'm just a man, so my will doesn't necessarily isn't the right thing, but how else do you get it done? If you can't change the charter, how do you force the consensus to break? You have to do something unbelievable. We don't advocate for anything negative, right? We can't do that because we see what that looks like in the national arena and around the world. You don't want that. So how do you do it? You go and you use the wherever I put my little book. You use this thing and you hold everything and you table stuff and you force motions to vote and reconsider, and you mess around until you get everybody upset.
Yeah. I mean, and because we, look, in Boston, for example, they actually have budgetary powers, the city council, and they reduced. In Worcester, they can only take away, like you can look at a line item, and if it's $30,000, say, you can just remove $30,000 from the budget. And if the city manager just moves $30,000 into that bucket, right? Like he can still do the thing that you didn't want him to do, even though you took the money away. Because you can't take that money away. You can only take amounts of money out of the total budget. You can only reduce the total budget.
Hey, my dad's watching. Hi, Dad.
In
Boston,
they took money out of the police budget, which then they sent the amended budget, but it's like here, the mayor there sent a budget proposal. It's actually a legislature, so it did its thing. It sent its budget back to the mayor saying, this is the budget that we've passed. And she vetoed it and sent it back. And they don't have a veto proof. So now they got to work it out. That's actually two branches of government who have powers, right? That's not the case here. We elect people to hire somebody who they are then basically the slave to. It's unbelievable.
Right.
And this is, again, back to the point here, this list of orders of what has been fulfilled and what has not, really just tells that story.
By the way, the best part of the show so far, I think consensus, is me going like this while you were running through those orders. That's just my opinion.
It was some visual. The last thing, a certain prime minister of a country gave his third address to a joint session of Congress this week. Look, like any country that's ever been a superpower in the history of the world, a country has done some things that are kind of questionable. Wars it has conducted, the way it conducts wars, the way some economic policies are play out on the world stage, et cetera, et cetera. Outside of the war in Iraq, I don't know that there was ever a moment in my lifetime where I've been more disgusted with this country and the people that legislate for it than I was this week. Batman is a monster, and that these gutless, just money begging scumbags stood up and clapped for this man over and over again while he lied to them over and over and over. While not really saying much of anything, it was all pontificating. I still managed to lie a bunch of times. It was embarrassing. It was truly embarrassing. And the UN General Assembly, that's everybody. Not like the Security Council where 5 nations can veto anything. They asked for an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice on stuff related to the occupation of Palestinian territory and conflict between the Palestinians and Israelis. And there was 9 questions that they asked. 2 were procedural, like, do they have jurisdiction, and are we going to do this? Yes, okay. And so of the 7 questions that were of substance, the closest any of the votes were was 11-4. And the American judge, who was just appointed by the Secretary of State in February, was with the majority on all 7 of them. Judges from Uganda, France, Slovakia, and Romania were the 4 on those that were 11-4. Some were 12-3, some were, but they were all a vast majority of the court on each issue. It included that the occupation is illegal, that settlements are illegal, that they need to be dismantled, and the reparations need to be paid, or compensation needs to be paid. And it was like a week later, this guy, who has the most aggressively established settlements in the West Bank, which is outside of Israel. Not to them, they believe that it's unclear what some of these people in Israel, the far right in Israel, believe. From the Nile to the Jordan. There's some theories of what is actually biblical Israel, or what is the land promised to Jews in the Bible. And this, but that this reprehensible man who has led a government riddled with extremists, including a convicted terrorist supporter, was cheered for in the U.S. Congress. It is disgusting on every level. And it doesn't matter what you feel about the conflict, or, this is about far right-wing extremist policies, not unlike Hamas, also a far right-wing extremist group. And the way it's conducted itself over the last 10 months, while it bombs the crap out of people and denies them food, even though he denied that. Everybody on the planet, everybody that's on the ground there says that that's what they're doing. Everyone. But, he said it in Congress. They went, hey, he's lying to us. Yay. There's not many things that make, I'm not a flag waving America F yap type of person. But there's not too many things that really turn my stomach. And that was one of them. That was one of them.
So, I just want to address the thing is that everybody, I think, would say that this conflict is terrible, regardless of the position you take on who you think is right. Okay. And I know a lot of that's performative. People will be like, I think this is bad. I think this is bad. And then they say the other thing. What I want to address, though, is that in a conflict like this, where we have tragedy, should there ever be cheering? Should there ever be applause other than for, we're going to end the conflict and we're going to have peace and nobody else is going to die? That's like there should be no cheering allowed, I guess. If I was going to determine the rules, until there's nobody else dying. And I know I understand what you've said before. Sometimes bad things are happening. That doesn't mean we can't say that there's other good things happening in a different place, right? Like you can't always do that. But in this case, I think universally we all think that people being hurt is bad, right? And so why is there any celebration of anything? Why are we wasting time and money to pay Congress people to sit there to do that? Because that we paid for that. I paid for that. You paid for that with your tax dollars, for our tax dollars to pay for that. And I don't. And by the way, I'll even go to another step. I feel the same way about other people who come over and make speeches to that body, to those combined bodies, and people cheer for those things. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense. I feel every time something like this happens, Tom, I feel smarter than senators. Why am I smarter than senators? I shouldn't be, right?
Because Ted Cruz exists.
But that doesn't I should never be smarter than a senator or the president or a governor. I'm just a regular guy. Like, yet in this moment, I'm thinking like, man, why didn't you think to do it this way? Like it just like things that immediately come to mind. And let me, I do want to address the ICJ thing within the UN. Um, I get frustrated with the United States again in performative action, but because of the Security Council approach, which means the United States can at any moment veto anything with their Security Council vote. The ICJ judge, what they do has no teeth, similar to our city council, because the Security Council maneuver can always override whatever that body comes to. And that again boggles my mind. Like,
Well,
why are we even doing this if it's not ever going to lead to anything where people are safer, where people are cared for? I don't care what you think. I don't care what side you're on. I just care that we stop hurting people, and yet we can't. No, apparently we have to like clap and salute and do all this stuff. Meanwhile, people are being hurt. People are starving. We have homeless people on the streets of Worcester. We're okay with that as a society, as a world, and I don't know how to get away from that in my own head. And by the way, today I had food. I went to the bathroom. I performed life functions, and I had joyful moments today. So there is definitely things in my life that make me feel good, and I'm not always thinking about these things that are happening. But now we're in this conversation, and I can't help but think, how does anybody have joy when there's that? It just doesn't make sense to me. And even these folks are supposed to know. They're supposed to know what's happening, and yet they get up there and they lie all the time, not just about this subject, but about everything. It seems no one ever tells the truth, and it's like, what's the point if they're not even going to try to tell the truth or try to uphold anything? It just
yeah, and
that's
and
hard.
just I know this, people will say, well, why won't they give the hostages back? Because the Israelis won't take them. It's really that simple. On what was it, October 10th or 11th last year, days after that horrific, unspeakable, or unjustifiable attack from Gaza into Israel, um, the Hamas said, "Take them all and get out. We'll give you them all right now." And rather than take their people and deal with it another day because they were able to take their people, and work on securing their border, or a million other strategies that they could have engaged in. At the time, the current prime minister of Israel was pitching countries that Palestinians may be deported to, that they could willfully go into exile, because that's what they thought they were going to get, is purging people from there, because they have a creepy ideological belief that it's all theirs. Not that there's not people on the other side that also believe it's all theirs. They're both stupid.
See, I can't, like, this is such a bad subject. I don't want to laugh, but what you just said is
It's
it's unnerving, because it's true. It's like,
but rather than take his people and take now there's far less of them. Many of them are dead. Israelis killed some of them. Rather than take those hostages back and bring them back to their families, which should be the interest of any country, to protect their own people and devastate in horrific harm's way. They decided to do this, and now they do what they did, conduct the war the way they did. And now you have a West Bank where, despite what that lying sack of garbage said, not more than, on any day since the beginning of the war, not more than half of the food that was being imported prior to the war has gone into that place, and it is typically about 10 to 20%. And the most recent reports are polio is on the rise in Gaza because nobody's getting vaccinated. There's no medical system because they bombed it all. There's no schools because they bombed them all. There's no houses because they bombed 80 to 90% of them. And anybody that's okay with it is a scumbag. And
I mean, none of it's good. It's just not, it's hard to, I don't even like, I feel unqualified in this subject to even like, but I can't help but have my heart go out to these folks, and So I'm left with only one choice. I can't do anything about it. I have no ability to functionally fix anything. Like, because the way our system is in the world is, no one would ever listen to me. You know what I mean? So like, you'd have to be qualified 17,000 times over, even though, I don't know, I feel like maybe I could get a fresh set of eyes on it, and maybe we could deal with it in a different way than what's been done for the last, you know, 70 whatever years that this has been going on and more. Um, Maybe there would be a different approach, but of course, you if you're not in the world system, then you can't get access. Then I'm left with the one thing, and all I can do is pray. And that's what and not to go into a deep discussion of my faith, but realistically, most of the time when you're in prayer, you're helpless anyways, because you're calling out to this person that you can't see, and you're asking for help in this situation. But to me, it's the only thing I know how to do, is to do that and to rely on that and hope. In the very core of faith is hope that something will happen that will change this horrendous horrendous thing that is happening. And I'm that's what I'm like. I resolve myself to do. At least think about those poor people, and just the just tremendous pain that everybody is suffering there, and just you know, like, I can't even imagine being like a soldier in this situation on either side and being ordered to do these things, and the trauma. It's mind-boggling. And I've been through some trauma, but I have no idea I can't even imagine what it's like to live like that on a day-to-day basis. We're so lucky and so blessed over here. And I hope that somebody has a clear head somewhere, somewhere, and just get and fixes it.
and,
Stop.
and
Just
I would also big ups to somebody who I don't necessarily agree with all the time, but Rashida Tlaib, who was one of the few Democrats with any soul or any moral compass that did attend the speech, and she sat there with a sign that said "war criminal," which I thought was appropriate. While many Democrats did not attend, I believe most Republicans did. Some Democrats did, and all but her was standing and cheering, saying, "Yay, terrorism! Yay, we love terrorism!" And it was truly a disgusting embarrassment.
yeah.
So,
I don't know
as I
what,
say, in our Christian nation, make sure you stand and pray to the Magic Skycloth when they play the Magic song, and then you watch something like that and keep saying we're a Christian nation. I don't know what Christ. I don't know. Christ seems pretty cool. You Christians, I don't know.
So well,
Not
as a
not
man.
you
No,
specifically,
no, no.
but
No, I don't take it as an offensive. I think that too many Christians are too sensitive, to be honest with you, because I don't know that the Bible calls us to be sensitive. It doesn't. It really doesn't. It calls for us to be caring and loving, and whether you want to deal with the specific doctrine, that doesn't really matter. At the core of it, you're supposed to love people. You're supposed to care for people, and you're supposed to do no harm. Right? You're not supposed to hurt people. If you're calling someone to be accountable towards something, it's supposed to be with your words, not physically, not with violence. I mean, Jesus never, I understand Jesus overturned the tables, but he didn't take the table and then beat the person over the head with the table, and and break it into pieces and start jamming it into people's eyes, right? That like so. I feel like sometimes people take things to like the actual like farthest extreme, and and we just don't have an example of that's how it's supposed to be. In fact, when Jesus himself was tortured, he didn't do anything. And so we're not supposed to do that. We're supposed to be doing it in a different way. And it hurts me that there's people that say that they are the same faith as me, that then say that this is normal, that there's an entire theory that's been in existence now since before World War II, called the just war theory. And the just war theory was started in the Catholic Church, and it was to justify war. It's just
well, I
and
mean,
it's mind-boggling that that's what we want to do, when that's not what we're supposed to do. You're supposed to fight for God, I guess, but you're not supposed to fight with weapons of mass destruction. You're supposed to shoot people. It's supposed to be a spiritual thing. And I guess my faith is just not that kind of faith. And it's a
Maybe
very
because you read the
personal.
book.
I did. I have. I've read it many times, and I understand it, and I read it in the original languages. I'm very lucky that I even had time in my life to spend, learning Greek and Hebrew and understanding it. Um, it's hard to comprehend that what I see in what I consider to be a sacred text is read by other people to be something completely different. And I don't know. I don't understand it. And I know that there's people that I love that, are like close to me that will, that would want to argue this point with me right now and say, yeah, but this and yeah, but that. And my question is that, like, fundamentally, how is this loving? Like, how is this caring? Oh, well, it'll be caring once enough people are dead. That doesn't make any
Oh
sense.
no, make no mistake. I mean, there's elements of this on both sides of that conflict, but they don't
Yeah,
give a
yeah. I'm,
damn
I'm
about
saying
people
it
who
for
die.
both sides. Like, when does the love start at some point in this? When does the care? When does the, and I mean, not to go into deep waters, but one of the things that
You know,
happened in our lifetimes is in South Africa was the apartheid, the Reconciliation Commission, which was this thing that we were lucky to see that Nelson Mandela, who was at the time a very powerful man and could have done things in a different way, he actually used his political will to ask for reconciliation between people where there was one powerful group that did terrible, horrible things, and another group that was the victim, and he made them come together and reconcile, which was just, when you really look into that story, it's mind-boggling in South Africa, and it's still not fixed there today, and I don't know that it ever will
no,
be.
I mean,
But
the path to get there was a little rocky, to
yeah,
say the
no, I mean,
least.
war. He went to jail for 30 years. I mean, it's like nonsense. But it, like, did we not ever look at lessons and learned and like try? I just don't understand it. I hate this thing, but they say this all the time that if you don't learn history, it's doomed to repeat itself. But I feel like even if you learn history, it repeats itself. It's like, so, it's just
Interesting that you bring up apartheid, because that is it wasn't one of the specific findings, but when the judge was reading the findings of the court, he read out the definition of apartheid and says that Israel's occupation in the West Bank meets the legal definition accepted by 8 million states or whatever. I just close this with for folks on the left. You see what I just did there? Notice how I didn't come off as an anti-Semitic idiot because I talked about individuals in parties, political parties, in people, and didn't run around talking about the Jews every second and sounding like a scumbag. Try it, because you're not helping.
Yeah, those folks make it worse. I mean, anybody who generalizes, into groups and starts saying everybody does this, it turns into it's just useless. And you can't even have a conversation because now it's like, now, all right, now that I guess it's everybody, so now we can't talk.
Yeah, it's everybody. Never mind all the exceptions to the rules. There's even today Palestinians and Israelis working together on trying to it's certainly a minority. It's certainly a minority. Don't get me wrong, but there's a beautiful peace movement in Israel.
There's actually
some that work with Palestinians, and there are young people going to jail refusing to serve in the Israeli military right now. There is certainly, look, the peace camp is a minority, the left is a minority in Israel. We've moved way to the right for sure, but
there's even some people within the traditional conservative, what used to be, I guess, Netanyahu's main branch, that have argued for a single state solution where everybody has citizenship, and there's a coastal. Even within the right, there's an argument but made by politicians out there, and they get shouted down, they get screamed at and cursed at, and in the Likud, you can actually go watch them make this tremendous argument for peace. And I understand it's only like 3 guys, but there's people that are thinking, huh?
I doubt they're in Likud, but anyway.
No. Isn't Likud the name of the whole thing?
No, that's the Knesset. The Likud is Netanyahu's party.
Right. Yeah. No. There's three people in his party that have made this argument for the single state solution, and I think they're not allowed to talk. He took their positions away.
They probably went to Kadima or something.
Yeah. Which is like, so these are actually people that voted for you, dude, and you're just like that. I'm done. And by the way, his majority is not really that like it's not like a massive.
That's why he's gone to far right wing people, because he's trying to stay in power. Because like another guy we heard of, he's trying to stay out of jail because he's got criminal charges for days, but it's a whole different topic.
The center movement is really splintered into like a million of these small. It's like it's crazy over there. We argue. You and I we just want
Israeli
one
politics is
legitimate
crazy.
third party, huh?
Yeah, Israeli politics is crazy.
No, that's what I mean. Like I just want one legitimate third party. They got 57 parties. It's like
parties go away and come back and join, and it's it's a parliamentary system.
One person over there. There's parties of one person, and they have a seat, and they're a minister of this, and it's like, okay, man, I don't know how to do all that.
We gotta get to one.
Hey, real quick before we go on, in another thing, we didn't talk about the British elections and the French elections. We don't have to do the French ones, I guess, because maybe. But in the British elections, something that connects to me as an Irish guy, for the first time in my life and in my mother's life, who's 70, and my dad's life, in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, the Sinn Féin party, and some people hear Sinn Féin and they think bad things, but that party is for the reunification of Ireland. And for the first time in any modern Irish person's life, they won a majority of the seats in Parliament in Britain. That has not happened ever, and so at least not since 1921, right, when the Irish, the revolution. But so people forget that Ireland is actually a partitioned state, and it's been not unified for however long. Cheers to the Sinn Féin party. They put aside their former ways. They used to be involved in bombings and terrible stuff that happened in Ireland. The children being killed in schools and just nuts stuff. And they've completely gotten rid of all those folks from the IRA, and they've focused on this literally a peace movement. So in the middle of a world full of crisis, I just want to say shout out to the Irish for trying to find a way to be reunified. Of course, the British don't want anything to do with that because of the North Sea oil, which is really, it comes down to the money. It always does. But hopefully they'll be able to vote it. I know my mom and dad would love the fact if Ireland reunified. My mother's family being from the Republic of Ireland, and my dad's family being from Northern Ireland. They were separated, by culture, and so that it would be great someday for the state of Ireland to be reunited. So some good news in the world, if they actually are heard. And King Charles, who may not be king forever, has actually said openly in the past that he would be open to supporting Irish reunification. He's just a figurehead, but he does have very significant influence over certain members of the British election system, and the way that their parliament works. And so it could actually happen, which when I was a teenager, there was no way that was going to happen. So good for them. And so the last thing about that, former Boston Mayor Ray Flynn, who was the ambassador to Ireland for many, many years, he was part of this process that has led to this. So there's the Boston local Massachusetts connection, and that's pretty cool news.
Yeah, and you mentioned France. I mean, the gist of that is, centrist and left-wing parties came together to fend off a pretty extreme right-wing party that intends no good things to happen.
So Marine, she won the first round, and then the second round, which has never happened again in France. When usually the first round, it's hard to overcome that second round, but it, in my opinion, is severely weakened the French Prime Minister's position, because he now had to include some folks that they did not want to include, similar to some of these things. In France, it's different too. You got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 parties, and they come together to form these coalitions. And so I hope that it stays stable because France is weird. France is always kind of an indicator of world issues. When there's things like going wrong in France, we're not in good shape. They're in the middle of the Olympics right now, and so it was a big risk to call those snap elections, and it worked out in the end. But man, did they win a lot of.
I will say this. I will say this about the Olympics. I know it's your favorite topic. The preliminary USA basketball. 40-year-old LeBron James out there playing bully ball. We ain't losing no games, which was interesting.
Hey, listen, I'm a Celtics fan, so I've never been a big LeBron guy, but you can't take away from the dude's just amazing body of work. He's 40 years old and he's dominating on the world stage. Good for him. And I don't
know if you paid attention to any of that at all. They I believe it was South Sudan gave him a real game, and
they did. And they called on LeBron to get it done to fix it. I watched.
LeBron just started backing people down. I'm bigger than you.
He basically he went old man ball. He put back to the basket, put his butt in it, and just went at him.
I think it was great. This is all preliminary, so we're not even into the actual tournament yet. Yeah. But South Sudan beat Puerto Rico yesterday, which wasn't supposed to happen, or day before yesterday, something.
Yeah, Puerto Rico's been a strong team for many, many years, and so South Sudan, maybe there's a story, big story. Who knows?
What's the sweet thing of the week? Let's get out of here.
Oh, so I was thinking about this, right? I actually thought about this all week. Okay, your favorite meat thing dipped in stuff, right? So how they got they do the deep fried Oreos, the deep fried corn dogs, and the deep fried this and that. Do you like a savory version of that or a sweet version of that? Like fried dough. Do you like fried dough? I'm a big fried dough guy.
Yeah, I'm a fried dough guy. I can do fried dough.
Like the Spencer Fair's coming up, I got to get some cinnamon and some stuff on there. But every once in a while, you get one that has like pizza sauce or meat on it. Leanne's like, what?
Yeah, that's the face. I didn't know what you're talking about, but I can endorse fried dough.
Yeah. So then, because they don't just do sweet things in there. They'll fry an Oreo, but they'll also fry like a pickle. It's weird. Like so many different things.
I don't want a pickle at all.
I'm allergic to pickles. Did you know that I'm allergic to pickles? Did I ever tell you that? It's a weird allergy to have. So, anyways, now I'm hungry for a fried Oreo, and I can't even eat that.
Yeah, that wasn't as good as the last one. Do better next time.
All right, I'll come up with something better next time. So, I was thinking of fried stuff. All right, buddy.
Yeah, no, fried. I mean, if you want to go general food instead of just sweet stuff, that's fine. But now you're going food dipped in sweet stuff, deep fried, and it's too much.
Well, we're running out of sweet stuff too. We've covered.
I'm saying so. Go broader food.
Yeah, I guess we have to go broader food. Okay, all right. Next time I'll have maybe we'll do the sandwich arguments coming soon to This Week in Worcester near you, right? Hot dog sandwich or not. We'll do that next week. Teaser.
Right. Fair enough. In closing, Likud is a terrorist organization, and we will try and screw up less next week. Until then, This Week in Worcester out.
Bye.